Hello and welcome to BattleTech Faction Briefings. Today we are looking at a minor mercenary unit who spent most of their time with the Free Worlds League, but also served in the Periphery. They are mostly a footnote, and they were demoted to an F rank status in the 3060s. But now they get their spotlight. Today we are discussing the Headhunters. The Headhunters have two different emblems over their history. The old emblem has a white silhouette of a head and torso with a dark background and a green border. Then, prior to the clan invasion, they would change their emblem to a skull with gold eyes set upon crossed silver swords atop a purple circle. They have an odd paint design with desert tan on the waist down to the feet, then olive drab from the waist up to the head. This two-tone look is based off the two standard military colors. While it may make them stand out on the tabletop, it is not nearly as striking as some of the other, more elaborate color schemes that some mercenaries have. The Headhunters are not a core part of Inner Sph history. However, if you want to avoid spoilers, then go to the time listed. The origin of the unit is unclear, but at one point in the 2900s, the Headhunters were a regiment-sized unit under the command of Alexander Chu. They would be on contract with the Lyran Commonwealth and stationed on Pencader. The world was in constant turmoil due to internal conflict, and in 2914, the Headhunters had an encounter with the Black Warriors, who struck out from the Cercinus Federation. The battle was so devastating that the unit went from a regiment to a battalion. After their poor performance, the Lyrans cut off their contract. At this point, Colonel Chu considered disbanding the unit. If not for his connections from his time at the Orloff Military Academy, the Headhunters would have disbanded. Captain General Elizabeth Merrick accepted their contract and stationed the mercenaries at the Orloff Military Academy for refit and to assist with training. It took a decade for the Headhunters to be back to full strength. They would get many new recruits from the students of the Orloff Military Academy. During their time working for the Academy, they assisted with training and defended the border. They would remain loyal to House Merrick and continue their contract for decades. They would work for Janos Merrick and fight against Anton's rebels during the Merrick Civil War. The Headhunters would be sent to Sophie's World to join the 6th Merrick Militia and the 1st Atrean Dragoons. This was an action to hold back the rebel forces, but the arrival of the 3rd Merrick Militia and Wolf's Dragoons Delta and Epsilon regiments put their skills to the test. The leadership of the 1st Atrean was able to lead the team in holding off Anton's forces for months. However, the Wolf's Dragoons Alpha Regiment arrived to turn things in favor of the rebels. A pincer attack by Alpha and Delta led to the surrender of the 1st Atrean. This broke the Loyalist morale, and the Headhunters, as well as the heavily damaged 6th Merrick Militia, fled. From there, the Headhunters were sent to Holt and worked with the Stuart Dragoons Home Guard to battle and rout the 5th Regulan Hussars. Finally, the team of the Headhunters and Stuart Dragoons Home Guard would join up with the 15th Merrick Militia and battle the very tenacious 3rd Merrick Militia on Park Place. It was weeks of fierce fighting to destroy the 3rd Merrick Militia. After the war, the Headhunters were stationed on Uhuru to rebuild. They were able to get quite a bit of heavy salvage from the war and rebuilt quickly with better equipment than they had previously used. When the war began, the Headhunters were still garrisoning Uhuru, where they had rebuilt up to a regiment once again. They would remain on guard duty while the 31st Merrick Militia would go on raids into the Lyran Commonwealth, with no major notable battles for the Headhunters. They would remain with the Free Worlds League as the Andurian secession began. They would fight alongside Duncan Merrick on Xanthe 3. They would fight the 3rd and 5th Andurian Guards. However, they would get backup by the 10th and 15th Merrick Militia. They had difficulty fighting the Andurians, and the battle dragged on. The Merrick forces were not managed properly, and Duncan Merrick would get killed, while the Merrick forces sustained heavy damage. However, the Headhunters would remain as a bulwark. They held the line for weeks until reinforcements finally arrived. The 1st Fusiliers of Oriente would arrive to provide support, which would allow the 15th Merrick Militia to withdraw. The remains of the 10th Merrick Militia, headhunters, and 1st Fusiliers were not enough to win the world, and they had to hold the line even longer. To make matters worse, the Tooth of Ymir would arrive to support the Andurians. The Iron Guard arrived weeks later, but it wasn't until 2 months later, when the 5th Merrick Militia and 12th Atrain Dragoons arrived, that the battle for Zante was finally won. By the end of the fighting, the headhunters would be down to half strength, and would retreat to Vanra in order to rebuild. During this time, they would start to develop a relationship with the Duke of Orloff. During this time, the headhunters would continue to guard Uhuru as the 31st Merrick Militia would go out to attack the Federated Commonwealth and capture the world of Calasan. However, the 31st held the world for only 10 days before fleeing back to Uhuru. The headhunters would take no major actions during the war. After the war, they would assist in protecting the border from enemy raids. By the time the clan invasion started, the headhunters would be down to battalion level once again, and still be stationed on their old garrison of Uhuru. Prior to the start of the war, the headhunters would be led by Esther Schold, the first commander not to be from the Chu family. Their time working with and defending the people of the Duchy of Orloff put them in good standing with the Duke of Orloff, who lived on the world of Vanra. While they liked their station, the headhunters would become annoyed with new policies set by Thomas Merrick. This included how the Orloff graduates would be distributed, which limited the mercenaries' ability to expand their forces. Due to this slight, the headhunters decided it might be time to leave the Free Worlds League. As they started searching for new work, the headhunters would eventually be gifted refit kits by the Duke of Orloff. This allowed them to upgrade 1/3 of their forces to modern standards. However, this would be misinterpreted by League Central Coordination and Command, the FWL Military Assembly. They believed the equipment was stolen, and this would lead to prosecution. The Duke would get angry at Thomas Merrick's overreach and help clear the headhunters of these charges. The headhunters would get bitter, and the other nobles of the Free Worlds League would start to have some issues with Thomas Merrick's policies. By the mid-3060s, the headhunters would begin a new contract with the Mirian hegemony. They would also have new leadership under the command of Sharon Karasek, who would take the new contract, ending over 150 years of service to House Merrick. They would be stationed on Lumati, where they were the defense against pirates, as they had done back when they first started working with the Free Worlds League. Their biggest threat during their early time garrisoning the world was local rebellions. They were supported by the Lothian League, who had lost the world to the Mirian hegemony years prior. The headhunters would take heavy losses from various ambushes by the well-armed rebels. The Mirian hegemony leadership believed the mercenaries were not fighting hard enough. The hunters would request assistance from the MAF to provide them with special forces to assist in stopping the insurgents. Despite some struggles, the headhunters would still be with the Mirian hegemony as the Dark Age began. They would get moved to New Venice. Their time in the Periphery would not do much to improve the unit, as they would decline to 80% full strength and again would be reduced to barely a battalion by 3145. By that time, they would be stationed on Reykjavis. They would join in on the invasion of the Duchy of Tamarind Abbey. They would end up fighting on the world of Lati in 3147. Two of their companies would be captured by Camacho's Caballeros. This would take a big chunk out of the mercenaries, and their fate is unknown at this time. However, it seems most likely that they have disbanded due to the majority of their battalion being destroyed or captured. While there are many mercenaries who get the glory as best of the best, the headhunters fall into the other side of the spectrum. They aren't even mid. For the majority of their history, they are generally terrible. They were very lucky to get the contracts that they got throughout their history. They lack notable achievements, and their death is just a note in a sourcebook. Odds are they will never get referenced again, and that's probably not a bad thing for these low-tier mercenaries. Due to their lackluster history, there are not many notable pilots in the headhunters. Alexander Chu. the founder of the Headhunters. It is unknown how he brought the unit together. It is likely that Chu took a team of disgruntled soldiers and started his mercenary unit. He would save his nearly broken unit by using his contacts in the Free Worlds League to get a new contract. Esther Schold. She would be the first non-Chu to lead the unit. She would take command prior to 3050 and would retire by the end of the contract with the Free Worlds League. Her leadership would maintain the unit, but also make it stagnate as they remained at green skill level during her tenure as commander. Sharon Karasek. The commander in the late 3060s, who brought the Headhunters into the Marian hegemony. Her leadership was able to bring the unit back to regular skill status prior to 3085. Rosina Cowley. She would be in command of the Headhunters in the mid-3100s. She led her troops into the disastrous battle on Lati and might be the last commander of the Headhunters. For the majority of their history, the Headhunters are a medium-weight mech unit that focuses on speed. They do occasionally add heavy units to their roster, but they tend to focus on lighter, faster options. They are most often down to only a single battalion, but have on occasion had bigger forces. Thus, they tend to be on the smaller side of mercenary units. Interestingly, they specialized in urban combat and tight quarters fighting. They prefer to fight in locations where their speed and lack of size are assets to the battle. The Headhunters have a very strange deployment formation. They use 2 mechs to make up their teams, which are divided into semi-companies of 6 total mechs. The 2 mech teams support each other as they use their speed to do hit-and-run strikes and distract enemies for larger allied forces. There is very limited support for the Headhunters. They lack infantry, armor, and arrow fighters. They have a dropship for part of their history, but by the late 3060s, they no longer have their own transportation. To make matters worse, by that time, they only had enough tech staff to handle 60% of their needs. These might be some of the reasons why they were an F rank mercenary unit by 3067. As a minor mercenary unit, the Headhunters do not show up in any fiction I could find. However, they do have some history in sourcebooks, but Periphery years are lacking. Keep in mind that about half the books have only the most basic location, formation, and color data. I did find one very surprising fact about the Headhunters. It is one of their recruitment strategies. They will give you 2 of their heads for 1 of yours. Any way you cut it, you will always come out ahead. Sorry, I couldn't help referencing my favorite Disneyland ride. Frankly, I was expecting so much more from this unit. They had minor appearances in my other videos, but outside of some fighting in the Third Succession War, they are mostly benchwarmers, or just getting beat up. Still, discussing a lower ranked mercenary unit is a nice change from the usual best of the best mercenaries that tend to get the spotlight. There is no reason to ever paint up a set of this unit, unless you really like mercenary versus pirate fights. Their paint style is unique, but there is very little reason to use them on the tabletop. If you did make a set, then let me know. I am very curious as to why you chose this unit. Next time, we are going to start our discussion of the Lyran Commonwealth with the 8th Donegal Guards, and then Katrina Steiner's Purse Puppies. Then, in May, it'll be time to discuss the Capellan Confederation. If you have recommendations, let me know in the comments. I am so happy that I finally crossed the 1K border. Thank you so much, everybody. It means more than you can possibly imagine. May your weapons stay hot and your reactors stay cool. Until next time, please check out the rest of the BattleTech faction briefing videos, and I'll see you at the tavern.